My name is Jen, and I would like to welcome you to 10 Steps to Plan an Effective Website. This video is brought to you by Enfira Web Design and Development. We develop websites for some of the best SEO and marketing companies in Tampa, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Denver, Colorado, Los Angeles, California, and Melbourne, Australia. Over the years, we've learned what it takes to not only make a pretty website, but a website that works effectively for your business. This workbook will take you through 10 steps to plan your effective website. Let's get started. Before we dive into the individual steps, let's discuss how you can actually use this workbook. There are 3 primary ways. The first is you can audit one of your existing websites. During the course of this workbook, you will develop a specific list of what your ideal website will look like. You can then take this list and compare it with your existing website to perform an audit. You can use this to plan a new website for your business. You can also use this to remodel an existing website for your business. In order to use this workbook effectively, we need to make sure that you are in the right mindset. The most important thing you need to remember about your website is that it is a marketing piece for your business. It is not your business. This is a very common confusion that many people make. They start out with a list of goals that are for their business, not for this marketing piece, which markets on behalf of their business. You can think of this very much like you would a brochure or banner, or even a whole booth at a convention center. Your website should positively connect with your target audience, just like if you had a booth at a convention center, you would want to attract your target audience. If you had that booth at that convention center, you would not want to attract people who weren't going to buy your products. So it's also important to remember that your website, like any good marketing material, should attract the people you want and get rid of the people you don't want. Now, for the remainder of this workbook, you need to remember to think about your website as a marketing piece for your business, not as your actual business. This workbook is not a quick process, but like anything in life, if you want to do it well, you're probably not going to do it quickly. However, investing in proper planning now can yield rewards for years for your business. Step 1 of our 10 steps. What's the point of your website? Now, we've discussed that your website is a marketing piece for your business. So what sort of a marketing piece is it? What is its purpose in life? If you were going to make a brochure for your business, you would have a specific purpose for that brochure of having your website. No, it's not because everyone else has one. Your website should have a real purpose that it fulfills for your business. So what business or personal need does it fulfill? What about a secondary need or a tertiary one? Right now, you really want to dig deep and think about, why else does this help you? And just keep thinking, why else? Why else? Put some real thought into this. At the conclusion of step 1, you'll have the goals for your website. Moving on to step 2. Who does your website help? You need to define your target audience, and that audience should be as specific as you can. Frequently in the industry, we call this creating buyer personas. And this is the audience that your website will be marketing to. This is not necessarily the same as the audience for your business. Perhaps there are people that your business serves that your website will not. So you need to keep that in mind and consider that. So, who is the audience for your website? Who does your website directly benefit? Are there people that your website indirectly benefits? Are there any other organizations or people that have rules that you need to abide by? If you collaborate with a number of other organizations on projects, you may need to consider them and some of their rules when creating your website and or your target audience. You also need to consider in this step who you want to avoid or get rid of. Now you may say to yourself, well, I don't want to get rid of anyone. Actually, you do. You specifically want to get rid of certain people who are not part of your target audience. For example, if you had a church and you had a female pastor and half of your congregation was gay or lesbian, you would want to offend people who don't match your way of thinking. Offending people who are not part of your target audience is actually a good thing, because people who aren't in your target audience aren't going to be interested in your product or your services or the message that you're creating and trying to disseminate to the world. You only want to be interested in who your target audience, and if you have any stakeholders, you want to be interested in what their concerns are. Otherwise, you want to exclude and get rid of other people as quickly as possible, because those people are not helping your business. Moving to step 3. How much money is your website going to realistically cost? And what sort of a budget do you realistically have for your website? Depending on your budget, you may be restricted on what you can do or can't do with your website. You'll need to account for both your upfront and your recurring costs. Some upfront costs are frequently design, development, licenses for products, images, logo design services, copywriting services, etc. Recurring costs can be hosting, domain registration, email service, newsletter services, maintenance fees, content creation, and any recurring license fees. When you consider your costs, you also need to factor in both time and money. For example, if you need to produce a certain amount of content each month, you will either need to allocate a certain block of time to produce that content, or you will need to allocate a block of money to pay someone else to produce that content. Even if you pay someone else to produce it, you will still need to allocate a small amount of time to review their work, because you don't want to put anything up on your site that isn't a reflection of your business and specifically the target audience and marketing to that audience. The result of this step will be a realistic budget in terms of both time and money for both your upfront and your recurring costs. Moving on to step 4. Freedom versus responsibility. Now here we're going to talk about open source platforms and closed source platforms. These have advantages and disadvantages. A good way to think of this is like renting an apartment versus buying a house. If you rent an apartment and you have a problem with your sink, you call building maintenance. Hopefully building maintenance will be there soon to fix your sink. If you have a home, well, you're probably fixing that sink yourself, or you are going to have to find and hire a handyman to come and fix your sink. However, on the flip side, if you want to paint your walls, if you want to redecorate, if you want to remodel, you can do all of that if you own your house, but you can't do that with most apartments. Similarly, with your website, you have this freedom versus responsibility. An open source system will allow you a lot of freedom, and with that freedom comes responsibility. Whereas a closed source system will significantly reduce your responsibilities, but with it, it will reduce your freedoms. Generally speaking, A lot of businesses start out with a closed source system for their first website because they don't want the responsibility and they're willing to give up the freedom because they don't really know what they're doing yet. However, after a few years, they find they outgrow that closed source system and move to an open source system. If a business is a little bit further along in its life cycle, they frequently will just go ahead with an open source system. I have an article here that you can read a more detailed breakdown on closed source versus open source and picking the right one for you. So the result of this step will be whether you want a closed source or an open source website platform. Requirements and integrations. What functionality do you need on your website, and what systems do you need to integrate with? Let's talk about some common ones. So some common functionality needs are e-commerce, membership portals, photo galleries, contact forms, online chat. There's a whole bunch of different possible functions that you may want your website to have. Similarly, there are also integrations. Some common ones are website analytics. You want to be able to measure what people are doing on your website. You want to know how many people are visiting certain pages. This is where your website analytics is very important. Email newsletters. Keep in touch with people. Customer relationship management software, CRM. A really common one is Salesforce. Shipping solutions or payment solutions if you have an e-commerce website. So frequently you'll find that your integrations and your functionality are tied together. This can be a hard one. What helps is if you go and you search the web for businesses in a similar industry to you and you see what sort of functionality they have on their websites. If you're not sure if something is or isn't functionality, write it down anyway. Just put a question mark with it. As a result of step 5, you'll have a list of your functionality requirements as well as the integration requirements. Moving on to step 6. Visitor accomplishments. So we talked about what our goals for the website were in step 1. We also talked about some of our target audience in step 2. So now we want to think about those goals and those audience members accomplishing those goals by being able to have specific, tangible actions that can be measured. This is also known as SMART goals: specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time-based. In order for your goal to be measurable on your website, it has to be trackable via some analytics or other measurement tool. For example, an analytics tool can track how many newsletter signups, how many times a contact form is filled out. There's ways to track phone numbers and how many times your phone number gets called and by whom. So there are a number of different things that can be tracked. You now need to take your goals and turn them into specific actions that can be tracked. For your main primary goals, you should also have multiple ways for someone to accomplish them. So if you want to track how many times your newsletter sign up is done, you should have multiple places on your website where people can sign up for your newsletter. The reason is, the more chances you give for someone to do what you want them to, the more likely they are to do it. Within reason. If you have 50 newsletter signups on one page, this is probably not going to be effective. So, as a result of step 6, you'll have a list of 3 to 5 measurable actions for your visitors to accomplish. Step 7. Visitor welcome. Now, everyone wants their audience to feel welcome. But welcome isn't really specific. You need to make something that is specific to your audience and what will make your audience feel welcome. Remember back to step 2. You have people that you are more than happy to offend because you want to get rid of them. For example, if you have a yoga studio, you want people to get a feeling of calm and serene. So if someone's coming to your website and they're looking for kickboxing classes, you probably want to get rid of them. And the more calm and serene your website is, the more likely they are to leave. And that's a good thing. Whereas if people are looking to really get centered and really calm down from the stresses of their day, and coming to a yoga studio to do that is a great thing. So you really want them to feel calm and serene. So now that we've thought about the feelings you want, we need to come up with some specific design elements to accomplish those feelings. So back to our calm and serene, we're going to go with soothing, cool colors. These are frequently called watercolors, which would be teals and blues and just very calming imagery. Just a whole general sense of zen. So a great thing to do here would be to go search on Google Image and just start looking for design elements, looking for things. Just start grabbing them, keeping them in a file. Remember that things you find on Google Image Search, you probably can't legally use on your website, but they are great for inspiration. So as a result of step 7, you'll have a list of emotions for your visitors to feel and the specific design elements to accomplish those emotions. Moving on to step 8. We're now going to think about your visitors. These are your specific targeted audience. And you want to take a step back and think of your website from their point of view. Why did they come to your website? They probably came there via a search engine. So, what did they ask that search engine that got them to your page? And why are you the best person to answer that question for them? So you want to think about how you are solving your targeted audience's problems and what the best solutions that you're offering are. So here it's time to take some research and do some brainstorming. And you need to find out what kinds of questions people would ask a search engine that would lead them to you. So a great tool is keyword planners. Google AdWords has a keyword planner. There are also a whole bunch of other keyword planning tools out there, some free, some paid, some with limited functionality, some with more extensive functionality. And you need to take some time to really research all of those keywords or key phrases. I like to use key phrases because they consist of multiple words. And multiple words means that you are getting more specific, and the more specific you are about what someone is coming to your website for, the better you can provide the best solution for that. Also, on a lot of these planning tools, you'll see that you can view the amount of competition for a specific key phrase. If you're starting off, you'll want to look for lower competition. So as a result of step 8, you'll have a list of specific and targeted key phrases for your audience. Moving to step 9, we're going to take those specific key phrases and we're going to turn it into some targeted content. So now that you've got the phrases, you've done your research, we're going to take that and we're going to turn it into targeted content. Remember, search engines want to give people the best results. So you need to have content which specifically answers those key phrases you did in step 8 better than everyone else. So here's also a good time to do research on some of your competitors by entering those key phrases into search engines and seeing what results they get and seeing how your content can be better than that other content. You also need to break down your key phrases into groupings. Each targeted group of your key phrases should match to targeted content for a web page. Back to our yoga example, if you offered group classes and private personal training, you would have those on 2 separate pages because you would have 2 groupings of key phrases that match to those 2 different things. You don't want to target too broad a grouping of key phrases on one page because you'll just hurt yourself. Instead, you want to target specific key phrases to different pages on your site, and you also need to make sure not to fight with yourself. By fight with yourself, I mean if you have 2 pages on your website which target private personal training, you're going to end up literally competing against yourself between those 2 pages. So you don't want to do that. As a result of step 9, you'll have a list of specific landing pages and you'll have a good idea on the content to go into those pages. Moving forward to step 10, we're now going to wrap up everything that we've done in the previous 9 steps together into a nice list. And this is not going to be a short list because we've done a lot of research, we've put a lot of time and effort in so far, so now we're going to put everything together in kind of a conclusion. So we've got goals. We have actions to accomplish those goals. We know what integrations we have. We have targeted content and key phrases to go with that. Now we're going to break down and get together all the different pages of our site. And you don't need to worry too much about the structure because you'll find that it kind of flows naturally once you start to see all of this together and you step back. So for each of your pages on your site, you'll need to mention who is the audience that you're targeting. Now frequently, a given page will only target a subset of your larger targeted audience for your whole website, which is again a subset of the whole targeted audience for your business. The key phrases and the content for that specific page, the design elements for that specific page, because again, the design elements for one page may be different than the design elements for your site as a whole, which may be different than the design elements for your business as a whole. The specific goals and their actions to be accomplished on this page, and the functionality and integrations for this page. Besides the targeted pages that you worked on in step 9, you'll also need some basic pages for your website. This is your home page, your about page, your contact page, privacy policy. Google recommends that you always have a privacy policy. There's a ton of online privacy policy generators out there. Just fill it out. It only takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Get a privacy policy. And last but not least, always make sure that you have a useful 404 page. This is an error page. If somehow someone got to your website to a URL that doesn't exist, they will land on this 404 page. So you want to have something useful here to kind of target people back into your website. And then finally, anything that is considered a site-wide item, for example, your site-wide target audience, you should list that separately. Don't try to include it in the home page. Just like each of your pages has a little bullet with all these different items on it, you will have a final bullet that is site-wide with a whole bunch of things on that. You'll now have basically a list of all of your pages and all of the specifics for all of the pages on the site. All right, I know that this is a lot, but while it does seem daunting, if you have patience and you break it down and you go through each of the steps separately, it's fine to go ahead and break it up over several days. You will find that you create a very, very good plan targeted to your specific website, which meets your specific business goals. And the reality is, if you want to have an effective marketing website, you need to invest up front in a proper plan, or you will not see any return on investment from your site. What's next? Now that we've made a plan, you can take it back and you can use it to audit your existing site, because now you've basically created your ideal site, and so you can compare it against your existing site to see if your existing site meets your needs or not. If you're building a new site, well, you've now got a plan that you can go take to a web developer to implement it. If you are remodeling an existing site, you can use your plan as well as your existing website and get it to a developer to redesign and remodel your new website. And a closing note on open source versus closed source. If in step 4 you decided you were going with a closed source solution, you may or may not need to actually get a professional web developer, although you may find it helpful to have a good developer with you. With a closed source system, you'll take all of your results from step 10 and you will evaluate that against the available site templates to pick the best match for your website. Again, most closed source systems give you a fixed number of templates to choose from, and you don't want to go with what you might initially think is the prettiest. You want to go with the template that matches the specific list that you made in step 10. If the template doesn't match the list, it's a bad template for your business. Also, always remember when looking at templates, images can almost always be changed. In fact, they're usually meant to be changed. So don't get too hung up on the specific imagery that you see in a template, as that is normally very easy to change. And if you have decided to go with an open source solution, I would strongly recommend that you work with a professional web developer to ensure that your website is built properly so that it can continue to provide value to your business for years to come. You will also need to have a maintenance plan for your website going forward so that it can receive all of the routine updates that it needs to have. If you don't have someone within your organization or your business who will be able to perform the maintenance, you will need to make sure to have a contract with a developer so that they will provide the maintenance for you. I know it's been a lot, and I hope that this has helped you to create your effective website plan. Good luck.